Okay, I'm going to read social studies book. I'm going to start on page 236, The Effects of the Gold Rush. The sounds of saws and hammers can be heard day and night. Builders can't keep up with the growing population. The year is 1849, and San Francisco keeps growing bigger and bigger. Every day, more and more people arrive at the harbor. Mostly quickly for the gold fields, but some stay to start businesses. Settlements grow and change. The discovery of gold in California set up one of the largest movements of people in history. In just a few years, San Francisco changed from a town of about 800 people to a city of 35,000. Ships entered and left San Francisco by the thousands. Ferries and riverboats made regular trips up and down the Sacramento and San Joaquin rivers. Sacramento grew quickly, and so did Stockton and Marysville. They became trading and supply centers for the mining camps in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada. Other towns that had been mining camps just months earlier now had banks, food stores, and doctors' offices. As a miner named Charles Peters described, mining towns were not laid out and built according to any definite plan. They just growed or grew. Many miners gave up the dream of finding gold but decided to stay in California anyway. Some became merchants and shopkeepers. Others claimed farmland in the Central Valley where they began to grow food for the miners and others. So I'm looking at those pages and I see that there's a graph on the top of page 237. It's the population of San Francisco in the year 1848. And it has one little person, and that little person stands for 1,000 people. And the person's missing an arm, so because remember it's 800 people. And then in 1849, those 1,000 people multiplied big time. I think the point of that graph is just to show like population in that one year grew like ridiculous amounts because people are coming there for gold, right? Um, Down on the bottom, there's a picture of San Francisco Bay. It says ships that brought the 49ers to California were often abandoned once they reached San Francisco. At one time, 500 ships were left in the harbor. That's crazy, right? So they would come to San Francisco and they would just ditch their ships and go look for gold. And they had 500 ships just like with nobody on them in the harbor. Fast fact, during the gold rush, buildings were needed so badly in San Francisco that some abandoned ships in the harbor were made into hotels, stores, and warehouses. It's very, very interesting. I would like to like read more about how they turn those ships into hotels and stores. I'm turning the page, so on page 238, and the heading is The New Economy. Not only did the gold rush bring thousands of people to California, but it also transformed or changed California's economy. The gold rush made some people in California rich. While many workers mined gold, others started businesses. They provided goods and services to the miners and other consumers. A consumer is a person who buys a good or a service. Most newcomers arrived in California with only what they could carry. These people needed places to live, food to eat, clothes to wear, and much more. This created demand for workers of many kinds. Carpenters built homes and buildings, and merchants sold supplies. Towns also needed police officers, bankers, grocers, blacksmiths, and other workers. Many entrepreneurs became wealthy selling goods and services to miners. An entrepreneur is a person who sets up a new business. One of the most successful entrepreneurs was Levi Strauss. He developed a product that miners liked and needed: blue jeans. Strauss and Jacob Davis, a tailor, designed the jeans to be tough and to last a long time. The jeans were made from denim, a rugged material, and had metal rivets at the corners of their pockets to make them strong. Entrepreneurs such as Strauss often had better chances of becoming rich than did people searching for gold. Because so many people had come to California in such a short time, many goods that people consumed became scarce and hard to find. Almost everything had to be imported or brought to California from somewhere else. In time, imported goods also included costly items such as fine furniture and clothing. Wealthy miners and business owners were willing to pay for these products. In addition to a shortage of goods, there was a shortage of labor, or workers. Most people wanted to look for gold rather than work at jobs. The shortages of goods and labor caused inflation, or a sharp increase in prices. In fact, some miners found that it was cheaper to have their laundry sent to China and back than to have it cleaned in San Francisco. You understand that? Like, they would put their laundry on a boat. The boat would go to China. Their laundry would be washed in China. Then it would get on the boat and go back. And that was cheaper than getting it just washed in San Francisco. It's pretty crazy. Clothing, food, haircuts, and pots and pans often cost 10 times more in California. So, because there was such a high demand for these things, people could charge more and people were willing to pay those higher prices. I'm looking at page 238, and there's a couple pictures. There's a picture of Levi Strauss. There's some pictures of on the bottom that says some business people who offered services to the gold miners, such as tinsmiths and bankers, made more money from their businesses than miners being searching for gold. So I think that a common known fact is that if you went to California looking for gold, you were not likely to get rich that way. In fact, people that were selling things to miners were much more likely to make money, like Levi Strauss, for example, and get rich that way. On page 239, there's a picture, and they have like a weight on there, and it says BT Rabbit's soap powder, and then gold. And it says some store owners mine the miners. That is, they charge very high prices for scarce goods. How does this cartoon illustrate it? So basically, they're selling soap to the miners, and they're charging a lot for this soap. I'm on page 240 now. New opportunities. Despite the high cost of living, people saw California as a place of freedom and opportunity. The gold rush economy in California meant that some people had opportunities that were not available to them in other places. Many women opened hotels, restaurants, and laundries. They worked long days buying and cooking food, changing beds, washing sheets, cleaning, and sewing. Mary Jane McGuire, who had come to California from Maine with her husband, wrote, "Women's help is so very scarce that a woman can work will make more money than a man." In California, women could earn their own money. In many other places at the time, women were not allowed to own property or start their own businesses. Many free African Americans came to California as entrepreneurs. Mifflin Gibbs opened a shoe store in San Francisco during the gold rush. He later helped start the Mirror of the Times, the first newspaper in California that was owned by African Americans. Like other free African Americans in California, Gibbs used some of the money he earned to help buy the freedom of enslaved African Americans in the South. I was listening to the radio, and they were doing something about Mifflin Gibbs. Super interesting. But anyways, the point of this page is that so the fact that this gold rush was happening in California and all these people were coming, like people weren't really paying attention to like standards that everybody else like really cared about. So like women owning businesses are like, okay, like no one cared. They could own businesses and things like that. African Americans owning businesses, who cares? Like everyone's too busy finding gold. Like no one's paying attention to that stuff. So a lot more freedoms there. On page 240 at the top, it says Mifflin Gibbs and this Chinese worker represent the diversity of California's population in the late 1800s. So basically, people are coming from all over the world to California to search for gold. African Americans, and then a lot of Chinese. Damage to the land. At the beginning of the gold rush, there were no strong laws in California to protect the land from the effects of mining. As a result, the miners generally did what they wanted. As gold became harder to find, miners often tore up land or built dams to change the flow of the rivers. This killed fish and kept the water from reaching farms and towns downstream. Perhaps the most harmful mining method was hydraulic mining. Hydraulic mining used water power to reach gold deeper in the ground. This method uncovered large amounts of gold, but it also caused big problems for the environment. It sent tons of dirt into the rivers that fed into San Francisco Bay. The mud stopped ships from traveling up some rivers. It also caused the waterways to flood after heavy rainfalls, damaging nearby farmlands. In 1884, lawmakers in California put a stop to hydraulic mining, yet some of the damage done by this and other mining methods is still visible today. So, humans do a lot to damage the environment, but during the gold rush, this was also happening. So, mining the land itself, like digging holes in the landscape, you could imagine how that would damage the environment. And then they got into hydraulic mining, where they were using water, and they were doing like really strong bursts of water on the side of hills to blow away, like erosion and weathering, blasting away the hillside. And that was, first of all, it was blasting away the hillside, right? But it was also like, where does all that stuff wash into? Well, it washes into the rivers, and then these rivers are not used to having that much silt or dirt in them, and then they're super muddy, right? If you look on page 241, they have a sidebar about hydraulic mining. So let's look at that. It says miners used water power to reach the gold that was deeper in the ground. And so we've got this diagram. It says 1, and you can see it's like they have structures built here, right? So the water is pumped through hoses from rivers and lakes at higher elevations. So there's a river up top there, and they're gonna pump it from up there down, which makes sense because making the water flow down would make sense, right? We can't like water flowing up, it's not going to flow, and straight line, it's not really going to flow either. So, and then the hoses were attached to nozzles called water cannons. And then they aimed those water cannons at the hillside, and they would spray it at the hillside and just like blast it away, turning it into mud, and it would slide down, right? So this muddy mixture was carried into a series of sluices, troughs, through which water flows. Grooves in the bottom of the sluice held gold and other heavier metals as lighter materials were washed away. So they've got that, like the little pan that catches all the stuff that comes down. And if it was heavy, it wouldn't wash away. But if it wasn't heavy, it would wash down to the river. So they have like a little channel going to the river. So now we're on page 242, a changing population. People of nearly every race, religion, and background came to California during the gold rush. Immigrants from around the world brought different customs, languages, and cultures. Most people learned to get along with people of other groups, but sometimes there were conflicts. Chinese and Mexican immigrants, California Indians, African Americans, Californios, and other groups faced discrimination. Discrimination is the unfair treatment of people because of their religion, their race, or their birthplace. Some miners felt that the only people from the United States had the right to search for California gold. Some people even threatened to harm immigrant miners or worked to pass laws that limited their rights. California Indians were hurt by the gold rush in other ways as well. Many were forced off their lands when miners found gold there. Miners also cut down forests and destroyed rivers and streams. These were the places where the Indians hunted, fished, and gathered their food. These actions often led to violent conflicts between miners and California Indians. In the early days before the gold rush, violence and crime were common. Because there were few government officials, some people decided to become vigilantes to enforce the laws. A vigilante is a person who takes the law into his or her own hands. Because they did not follow the rules of law, in some cases, vigilantes punished people who had done nothing wrong. So on page 242, there is a picture. It says, after a gang set fire to downtown San Francisco, Sam Brennan, remember him? He's the guy that like reported the gold, led the formation of the Committee of Vigilance. Why do you think the group chose an eye to be a symbol of its on its seal? So it's like almost like a police force kind of, but like they didn't really have any rules they had to follow. And then on page 243, to show the dislike for Chinese immigrants, some miners in California during the gold rush would cut off the long braided hair called cues worn by Chinese men at the time. So I'm not sure if I said that right, but they would cut those off to show disrespect. So just like most parts of U.S. history, the gold rush featured discrimination and some pretty bad things going into people that were different. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back now to page 234. It says the life of a 49er on page 234, 235. I think we should read this just because remember a 49er is someone is like a prospector, someone who's looking for gold. At the time of the gold rush, much of California was wilderness. 49ers often lived in simple mining camps located many miles away from the nearest town. They needed sturdy tools to help them do their work. In time, 49ers developed new tools that made searching for gold easier. So let's look at some of the tools that 49ers used. So they had these metal pans, and they would use that to pan for gold in the streams. So, you would put some dirt and water into your pan and you would slosh it around. And because gold weighs more than other minerals, the other stuff would fall out and the gold would stay in. And that's how you would find it. It says miners needed clothes that would be long lasting. In 1873, Levi Strauss and a partner designed pants that had metal rivets on the pockets to make them strong. Jeans such as these are still popular today. Yeah, so jeans were invented during the gold rush by Levi Strauss. Thank you. On the next page, miners dug for gold with picks like this one. So we have a pickaxe. This advertisement is for the Mormon Island Emporium. Such stores not only sold goods to miners, but also served as mail and banking centers. So there's an advertisement. So an entrepreneur trying to make money by selling things to miners. And then we have a cradle. A cradle was also a mining tool. It says 2 people were needed to operate a cradle, but gold could be separated from dirt and soil much more quickly with this tool. So you've got the pan on the one side, but the cradle was even better. The cradle, you would rock it back and forth, just like a baby cradle, and it would get rid of everything that was not gold, obviously, and keep the gold inside the jar. Excuse me. So yeah, that is about the gold rush and the effects. Some of the effects of the gold rush that I hope you got from that were that the population of California, particularly in San Francisco area where the gold was happening, like increased like crazy, right? So many more people came to California during that time. The 1 year population in San Francisco, I think it said 800 to 35,000. It's crazy, right? So of course the population grew a lot. Also, all these mining camps turn into actual cities. So the amount of cities and towns in California grew a lot too. Another change is the economy. So with the new population came more stores, more merchants, more people selling things. More opportunities. So people that were from different backgrounds, like different countries, women, African Americans, it came for opportunities. And then there was some bad effects, like the effects on the environment were really bad during the gold rush. So things that mining in general is bad for the environment, but hydraulic mining in particular, super bad for the environment in the way that it would blast away hillsides, and then the runoff into the rivers would, kill fish, damage the bay, damage the rivers, things like that. And then with the changing population and the diversity in California, people's prejudices started to spring up. And people started to be wary of people that were not similar to themselves. So we see that ugly side of humanity coming out too. So anyways, those are the basics of how the gold rush affected California. We're going to do something with this. But today I just wanted to read through that lesson with you and make sure we understand what's going on. Okay.